Hello and welcome to today's video. Today we're going to talk about the patch 142 for Mechabellum. And it's a pretty small one in terms of content, but it is a very significant one. Right now we have a Hound meta. All the meta units basically have the same idea. They are mostly chaff clear units, and after the last patch where the Arclight got hit, the Hound got even better because it's the main competition that it's fighting against. And the level cap wasn't such a big deal. It's still a very powerful unit, and it was still spammed a lot with the fire technology that is just 200 cost. So they're addressing both of these problems this patch by decreasing the attack by 5%. That does affect Hounds a little bit in terms of chaff clear when it comes to cost control and stuff like that, but other than that it's still one upgrade or one level and they clear all the chaff. So I don't think it's going to be too significant. However, Hounds have overall a lot of damage, and that's not as obvious to some people for some reason. For example, if you have a Hound Mustang start, they will absolutely demolish units like Saber Teeth, which you probably should not expect them to do since they are a little bit of a chaff clear unit or maybe a small chaff unit themselves. But they do clear these very easily, and I think in that case it's actually going to be significant as well, just lowering the overall damage output, and I think I like that change for sure. And then the big one is the Incendiary Bomb nerf. Cost increased by 100, so up by 50%. And I think it's warranted because all the other fire technologies have way higher investment costs, being the fire badger napalm or the incendiary bombs on the Vulcans, and obviously the incendiary on the Stormcallers. And all of these technologies have big downsides, randomized effects, and all that stuff. And the Hound didn't have that. It's already a problem when this technology is in the game just to ignite a oil for pretty much free, while having no unit on the board that could do that. So makes the instant fire play anywhere on any term you want way worse because it's plus 100, and makes the very early incendiary also much worse. There was a meta, especially from the 201s as well, where they buy this tech as soon as they can, just drop them in the middle and let the opponent deal with that, because the answer to incendiary is always the chuff to block it, different deployment methods to work around it, and also especially Mustangs with a interceptor technology. But if you drop early game Mustangs with interceptor, you will run into Vulcans and other units that absolutely demolish Mustangs, so you will get ahead by pressing a 200 cost button. And the Miss Interceptor does cost 200 itself, and the units are more expensive to counter the unit that actually is a problem. So I really like that one. The bomb is still strong. I think it's still worth keeping on the bar as well. Just because the normal upgrades, the armor and whatnot, are not that great. Fire Extinguisher is playable. We saw a lot of play of that in the tournaments. But I think it can still compete with the armor upgrades since the XP nerf of the Hounds hit that one much harder, and Incendiary Bomb works disregardless of the stats of the Hound. So I think that's a good change. In my opinion, it should have been a change in the last patch. I think it's pretty obvious if you're nerfing Arclights that the Hounds will absolutely take over, since they were already good before. And it's, in my opinion, a little bit overdue. Next up, again, Abyss changes. This time we get a just flat out buff all over the board, 10% increased stats, and a very integral change here. Disintegration, the big AoE spell around the Abyss, will have no cooldown but will be enabled immediately at the beginning of the battle, and the damage is nerfed from 30% to 20% current HP damage. However, I think this enables you to stop unit trades that are very close to the line and just drop that just like you would a war factory for one cheese turn, straight at the line, enable disintegration, and deal a ton of damage to all the units regardless of their HP pool, and also enable a big heavy slow. That's something I could see the Abyss being used for. Still just a cheese turn, but I mean at least it's playable in some sort of scenario here. And I really like that. I will try that out and see if I like it, because right now the Abyss doesn't have any major technologies where you wouldn't do that. And it's very different from the ionization tech on the Raidens, for example. Raidens have good techs. Their techs are actually very important. So putting ion on your bar is a problem sometimes. And this one does counter high HP units not as well, but it stops aggressive pushes, big blobs of Typhoons at Fortress, for example. That is something that I would like to see, if that is a answer to those. Other than that, it's the same over the board. Vertical sweep, cost reduction, photon coating, cost reduction, wreckage recycling, also a cost reduction. I don't think they are too useful, these techs, because the unit still does not perform very well in its own role. But I think it's a step in the right direction. I think that will be something that will add up in enabling the unit making these changes to the unit more cheaper. And I think that's good, because the overall unit cost is already pretty expensive. And the technologies is what makes these units unique, makes their playstyles unique. So whenever a technology is very highly priced, its chances of being seen are just lower. And that leads to things like war factories just being big blobs of stats and not getting all the technologies going. Because if the technologies were as cheap as they were on the Abyss, the unit would just mass produce units itself, and that's a big problem. Alright, so overall I think good change for the Abyss. A little bit of play that I could see there. And we were already talking about the vertical sweep being a possible cheese to get towers down as well, which also got buffed. Alright, then we have more HP changes. This time Sabertooth Arclight opening is plus 200 health. So Arclights got nerfed, and the Sabertooth itself, I think it's a horrible starting unit in the first round especially. So I really like that one. Although, to be honest, I would still not choose the pack. Maybe to sell out of the Sabertooth and get the Arclights, but that's just already negative tempo, so I'm not sure about that one. And then my favorite specialist got nerfed, the Quick Supply. In my opinion, a good change. Minus 200 HP. And I think I like that, because the Quick Supply has a big problem. It's the only starter that can go Phoenix round 1 plus Chaff. That's already a very powerful one. And then also it has the ability to tempo you out of the game before you can do anything. Snowball units that need early XP and tower pressure. And I've lost a lot to Quick Supply, and I've played a lot of Quick Supply, and I don't really lose that often if I pick it. So I think that's a good change. Same for Farseer spec. Farseer overall a good unit early game, and the spec itself hands you 300 at worst case, just like that. So 100 minus I think is a fair change, because it's I think worse than Quick Supply's tempo, but I think it's warranted. Yeah, Fortified, Amplify and Missile specs are my 3 least favorite specs, and they all gain additional plus 100 on the starts. So I would say that's also very nice, because the Fortify bonus is just not high enough to be extremely valuable. Amplify spec blocks item slots, and does have very low impact, I would say, in general. And then the missile spec is a very tempo heavy thing. Sometimes you have a spec, sometimes you don't. In the late game there will be a lot of shields and whatnot. So I think that's a good change as well. I would say all of these specs got nerfed and buffed accordingly to how I see their power level, and I think that's a good thing. And then finally, a very interesting one for me, replay. You can do the same round repeatedly instead of restarting the replay over and over again to get to the same round. I love that. That just means I will get to play more replays and more retries instead of having to reload the entire thing yet again and again. So very nice change. Thank you very much for that one. Okay, and that's it. I think, as I said, small patch, but very relevant. And I think it's an overall good patch because it addresses one of the bigger issues here. And very little changes that I do not understand. And that's always great. Alright, so that's gonna be it for me for today. Thank you guys for watching. Consider subscribing if you enjoy the content. And see you guys next time. Bye bye.